All right. So thank you for joining today's live stream. Obviously, we're coming to the end of the week now, so it's probably a good time to just have a quick review of what's actually occurring in the markets and try and work out what's going to happen going into next week as well. So I just really wanted to start off by looking at the traditional markets at the moment. In particular, the Nasdaq right now does not look good. So the overall theme here is sort of having had, we're starting to move towards obviously the US elections. And I think with that, what we may see is quite a lot of volatility sort of added to that at the moment. The central banks are desperate to get the economy moving, and one of the ways in which they're wanting to do that is to keep interest rates low. So obviously Powell came out yesterday, I think it was, and so did the Bank of England actually, and they're wanting to keep, as I say, the interest rate as low as possible. And in the UK in particular, they're talking about negative interest rates as well. And this has been something that's been talked about for a long time, and I never really thought that we would actually get there. But I think it's quite evident that one of the strange things about this whole COVID situation is that we seem to be in a deflationary environment despite having printed a shitload of money, which most people didn't really see coming. Everyone sort of thought would see the opposite. So at the moment, obviously, the intention of reducing the interest rates is to have a disincentive to have your money in the bank and to try to sort of incentivize people to spend their money, which is obviously a problem at the minute. In particular, given that I think what we're going to, like in the UK, we've had furlough schemes and things like that that have kept people in their jobs, but they're all coming to an end. And it's all sort of happening towards the end of the year as well, when cases are starting to spike. So the UK is now sort of going into lockdown. So I was going to do the first educational video today, but instead yesterday I was sort of interrupted where I had to sort of go and see a few people before we're not allowed to see people anymore again, which is a bit unusual to say the least, but also it was kind of expected. So the markets are going to be I think they're in a risk-off situation here because yes, we've recovered from COVID to some extent. However, the problem is that I don't think the businesses are really seeing that recovery. Money's not moving around the system. People aren't spending money. And, we're going to start to see the effect of people effectively losing their jobs. I think that's going to come around this year. So towards in the next few months, certainly. So I think we've had obviously a really nice strong bounce off the bottom. But I think what we're most likely to see is more downside in the traditional markets, particularly as the sort of risk off going into the election, as I say. So if just looking at the S&P 500 to start, so all of the charts just look the same really, which is kind of on the brink of breakdown. Now, it's whenever the S&P 500 tends to break its previous highs. I mean, this isn't hugely dissimilar to what we're seeing now. It tends to come back to the 50-week moving average, which I have actually been talking about for some time now. And I think it certainly looks as though, on an AB equals CD kind of basis, that this 50-week moving average here is very inviting. Obviously, the market's been moving extremely strong to the upside of late, but I think that the odds are that we're going to continue down. So I'm probably going to be looking for shorts next week on the traditional markets because for me, there's some quite clear ways that you can manage your risk on an entry here, and the downsides particularly, inviting for shorts. So yeah, the S&P 500, I think 3,000, 3,100 certainly in the next sort of couple of months would be a perfectly normal correction. But given the narrative of, is Biden going to beat Trump in the election? We've got difficulties getting money going around the market. there's just generally this uncertainty going on, and with the increased lockdowns as well. So I'm bearish overall on traditional markets. Now, this is obviously problematic for Bitcoin potentially, given that well, we know what happens when the S&P 500 sells off. Everything else is selling off as well. So gold obviously sold off, and so did silver and Bitcoin. So I think that it's reasonable to be precautious just generally on all assets at the moment. I mean, the gold and silver themselves, gold's in this, or silver, sorry, is in this really quite large consolidation, mainly happening between sort of $26 and $28, around that sort of range. And it's just constantly flipping from looking like a head and shoulders to a bullish consolidation. It doesn't really seem to know what it's doing, but it is, being pretty resilient up at these sort of relatively astronomical prices compared to where it was previously. So silver obviously looks okay for now, certainly better than the traditional markets do. And gold also, I mean, it's a similar story. It's just sort of continually putting in lower highs. So I think gold and silver will continue to dictate what happens for Bitcoin. And if there is some sort of big sell-off in the traditional markets, I think what's likely to happen is that these will also sell off, but they'll recover quicker than the traditional markets do. So I'm very much just sort of keeping an eye on what's going on. I haven't really done much trading this week, so the plan was to sort of sell out Bitcoin up at like 10.7, 10.8, and I got out of most of my position around there as planned. And obviously we're going to have a quick look at Bitcoin now. Bitcoin has been effectively... so on a weekly, I mean, Bitcoin looks absolutely fine. It's sort of doing exactly what you'd expect it to do. It's bouncing off the 20-week moving average. And this week, it's just been slowly grinding its way all the way up from the breakout. And in rather an annoying fashion, to be honest. Overall, I mean, just going back to the weekly overall, it looks, as I say, absolutely fine. But we haven't bounced as strong as you might like us to have done to sort of say convincingly, right, okay, the bottom's, our time at 10,000 is done. What we have seen is kind of this, as I say, this slow grind to the upside. So not really very many sellers, not particularly any like overwhelmingly large buyers either. It's just been constant slow drift to the upside, and that. Although that is quite good, it does make me a little bit nervous. We haven't got straight back up to this sort of 10.8, 10.6 level very quickly. So it's not like a complete reversal, but I think what we're generally seeing is, I've been talking relative to gold and silver, which obviously we know now that people do see Bitcoin in the same category, like MicroStrategy's just invested all of that money into Bitcoin. So people do view it as a hard asset now, which is a great thing. But I think we oversold relative to gold and silver, and all we're doing now is sort of correcting back to that level from which we broke down, which was about 11,300. So short term for Bitcoin, I'm relatively satisfied that we're going to continue on up. But I don't think that we're like on the brink of any sort of major moves now above 12,000, primarily because of that sort of general risk off that's going on in the rest of the world. So, money might flow into Bitcoin relatively, but it may just mean that it can just sort of stay sideways in roughly this range that I think we might spend quite a bit of time in. I don't know, obviously. I don't know if we're going to go below 10,000 again, but we know that there's a lot of buying interest there. So it's certainly like gut feel is that obviously it looks a little bit like we're topping at the moment, and we're certainly coming into all of this buy and sell volume up here. So a retracement back to 10,400 or a back test of this breakout certainly seems reasonable at this point. My overall sort of strategy at the moment, unfortunately, as I say, I was distracted yesterday, so I didn't get the chance to buy the VWAP because I was unable to manage it. I did have bids there, but the VWAP strategy has been, proven to be the best way to get into the market when it's doing something like a slow grind up. You can start to accumulate a position off the weekly VWAP, which, yesterday it was obviously a great buy at 10.8, sorry. And obviously, there's a 2% ish move there, which I know that at least one of the guys in the chat took advantage of. So yeah, I mean, my plan going into the weekend, I'm sort of looking for buys around 10,800. And I'll be sort of looking to sell that. I'll probably keep a hold of most of the position. I'm interested in buying down at 10.6 as well, but I'm very much adverse at the moment to like highly leveraged positions, just because I'm not 100% clear what's going on in the market. I was a lot more certain down here that things were good because of what we were seeing in the volume that we talked about, but generally speaking, it's just a bit of there's not a huge amount of conviction. The upside's limited, I think, to this 11,300 level, and the downside's also fairly limited as well. So I'm looking for buys. I'm not looking to short the Bitcoin market at the moment. Generally speaking, looking at volume, so this is the trader platform, you can see that there is some buyers are generally more prevalent on the books than sellers, which is obviously a bullish thing. But the top traders on Binance have just been getting shorter and shorter and shorter all of the way up this move, which I don't know whether or not how good they are, these traders, but they're supposedly the best ones on Binance, is it Binance? Yeah, Binance, and they are not convinced of the move up. Open interest, we have seen sort of bottom out, and it's starting to show some signs of movement to the upside, so I view that as a positive thing. If we were seeing a big sell-off in open interest, then I'd be a little bit more concerned about this move up. We are now up at the sort of 625 million level, so it's possible that we get that pullback that I'm sort of talking about. 10,600 would mean that we stayed in the trend to the upside, generally speaking. So if this is the uptrend, 10.6 is probably, if you believe that we're going to continue on up, it's probably a reasonable buy. So as I say, like going into the weekend, I'm looking at buying the weekly VWAP like one last time and seeing if we can't get a nice bounce back up to 11,000. So that's really it for Bitcoin. I mean, tens of charts, there's not huge amounts going on there. One of the interesting things that happened over the last weekend, was this big Chad whale arrived with a ton of Bitcoins that they wanted to buy very quickly down here at sort of 10.1 to 10.2, and then you could just see they started chasing the book up. So they most likely, obviously I don't know, but they most likely sort of just walked this thing up, just buying in slowly over the course of the week. And we obviously have like a little bit of a gap there, and then the buyers are now still very strong down at 10.9. So we haven't seen these guys give up yet, and sort of eventually these guys are probably going to move all of the bids up between 10 and 12, and then we'll have a strong base to push on towards 20k, or they'll just obviously buy in and they'll be responsible or partly responsible for pushing it up. So Bitfinex Whale, which we know tends to do pretty well and in predicting where things are going to go, they are still interested down here at the below 10k level. Obviously they're also quite interested in selling 11. So yeah, it's not 100% clear, the position with Bitcoin. One thing that's interesting is the CME. We know that the spot volume for Bitcoin's been sort of driving the buys up, but the CME itself has looked decisively weaker than the spot market. So this is the OBV here. You can see Bitcoin's OBV on the daily for is very strong. However, on the CME, it's the futures traders just aren't interested in this market to the same extent at the moment. Whether or not that's important or not, it doesn't really matter. But it's always nice to have the CME kind of on your side when price is going up. So the CME report, Commitment to Traders report, hasn't come out yet, but that'll be an interesting one to have a look at as well, to see how the institutions have been positioning themselves, and if there's any buying interest come back in. So that's really it for Bitcoin. Across time frames, we may as well have a quick look at that while we're here. Not that. So Predator on the 4 hour just has not been convinced of this move up at all, beyond sort of 10.7 where I sold out. And part of the reason for that is just that OBV's been continually the main reason for that really is that OBV has been moving down on the 4 hour. Just to quickly show. So yeah, you can see on the 4 hour that OBV, there's like a big OBV divergence. So although we've been going up on like relatively low volume, the sellers have been more in control. When there has been selling, it's been on high volume. So effectively the buyers are kind of taking it up on the low volume, and then the sellers are selling into it quite hard. And obviously that to me is quite a bit of a concern. Sort of suggests that people are quite happy to exit the positions up at 11,000 at the moment. So yeah, I'm looking to sort of build a long position from 10.6 to 10.8 at the moment. You can actually see that, or when I last looked, if we have a look at, I do recommend looking at this stuff, particularly if you're sort of scalping and day trading. On Bitfinex, for example, here you can see that there's a lot of buyers have moved their bids towards 10.8 in the last 1 day. So also you can see here someone subtracted quite a big bid at 10.9 and re-established it down at 10.8. So that's where I am as well. 10.8's kind of been the weekly VWAP's been a good place to be. So that, as I say, is my strategy on Bitcoin at the moment. I don't. Have you got a view at the minute, Phil, or anything? Or do you think I'm talking rubbish?
No, pretty similar actually. Viewpoint. I mean, I think traditional markets is where everyone's looking at the moment, and they do look quite shaky. And I know I was chatting about it to you actually on a live stream a couple of weeks back, I think, saying once we head into September, I could see there being a lot of fuckery in the lead up to the election. And so that makes me quite bearish traditional markets. But then on the other hand, if you look at Bitcoin specifically, I would lean slightly bullish. So there's obviously a conflict there that I'm sort of feeling at the moment, which means that anything I do, I'm not doing high conviction. I kind of feel anything I'm doing, I'm sort of doing it in like first, second gear rather than, fourth, fifth gear when I see a clear trend and I'm really going for it. And that's sort of how I'm approaching my trades at the moment because of my overall confliction, I think, between traditional markets and Bitcoin.
Yeah, good. At least I'm not the only one then. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's bloody.
There are a couple of bullish. You look on chain. We were talking the other day about that SOPR indicator, spent output profit ratio. That's turned bullish again now above 1. And yeah, a couple of other things that I just make me feel bullish. The fact that 10k was defended so well for that time for about over a week. I can't help but be bullish on Bitcoin, but because of the macro context, it just makes me a little bit cautious in the short term. So I'm happy to just not go gung ho for a few days on Bitcoin until I see what plays out. Really.
Yeah, it's a good time to be an investor, is what I would say. It's a tricky time to be a trader. Um, Obviously, if you can get Bitcoin below 10 now, I mean that's going to be, in my view,
Yeah.
not advice, but that's probably going to be a good buy for a good 2 year investment or something like that. So I think a lot of people feel that way, but clearly people aren't in a hurry to get into the market at the moment, so they're just sort of all sat there with the bids at 10.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what's it going to take for them to start FOMOing in? Well, would need to be above 12, and getting above 12 looks like a really bloody tall order at the minute. So the outcome of that sort of suggests to me sideways. Sideways and up's probably the best outcome that we can probably hope for at the moment. So yeah, I think we're probably aligned on that, which is good. One that I wanted to share was Ethereum. So Ethereum, the alts have been performing pretty piss poorly, to be honest. If we just have a look at them generally, sort of like what we call the old, what do we refer to them as, the
Old cycle.
old cycle, yeah. Like, you know, XTZ, Tezos looks terrible. The only two really old cycle coins that look good are Ethereum starting to, it's got this nice sort of Adam and Eve bottom here, or cup and handle, however you really want to look at it. So Ethereum looks like it's got a little bit of potential here. To me, I was considering taking this sort of trade. I think that the upside target that I was looking at was, back at the highs again. So the thing that stopped me taking it was just, I think I'd prefer to buy a breakout, like something like a 4 hour high close above this 390 level. I think that'll probably lead us up towards, certainly back towards the sort of $435 or 480. So that's pretty much the only old cycle alt that I've been considering for an investment. Well, not an investment, a trading position. But I mean, I was going to show Link as well. It just looks absolutely horrible. Link. We were saying, it looks like it's been doing what it's done in the past, where it sort of puts in a double bottom and then continues on up. But it's certainly, telling me that we need to move slowly if we're trying to get into a position here. I mean, if we do make a bottom like we did here, double bottom, there's nothing wrong with just waiting to buy the breakout. I'd much prefer, and I've sort of talked about this a lot, I'd much prefer to try and buy strength than to try and, catch a falling knife. Falling knives are notoriously difficult to catch, and what our phrase is, there's always another dump, and you can just completely mess it up. So if Link can start breaking out of this downtrend, then I think it would be an interesting buy, and I think it will ultimately run to much higher highs. But right for this moment, it just looks horrible. So I could almost like forgive people for wanting to short this, but at the moment, I'm just sort of watching and observing as to what's going on, and just getting myself ready to position myself for when we do look like we're going to break out to the upside. Ripple, the Ripple chart, weekly. Don't know if anybody's a fanboy of Ripple in the chat. I don't think we have any. Ripple, again, it's just been rejected by this. I mean, we did try and get long in here, made a little bit of money, and then got stopped out eventually. But it doesn't look like an inviting thing to buy at the moment. I think eventually, obviously, it will make a big, strong move to the upside, but it just looks weak. And all the old cycle coins are the same. So very, very tentative to take any long positions. Don't particularly want to short the market. And unfortunately, it's just that's just the way it is sometimes with trading. Not taking your time is often the best approach because you want to preserve that capital. If we do go lower, then we'd rather have it and to buy in when we do eventually bottom. Some of the coins on a better note, I think. Where is it? Haven. Where is it at? So Haven has been doing fantastically well. Are you still in Haven, Phil?
I am, yeah, yeah. I mentioned in the chat earlier today. I was trying to manage my risk last night and chopped around a little bit on these levels where we're at. So I'm still in the position, uh, but I'm cautious on all alts. I mean, I was waiting for you to ask me what I thought, but this is a higher conviction play for me in terms of
Hmm.
alts generally, relatively speaking. But I still think I don't want to be getting too confident on this in the short term because I actually think alts could all take a sort of 30-40% dump versus Bitcoin. But Bitcoin puts in a good move over the next sort of week. So I'm just being really cautious on alts. But relatively speaking, I think this is the one of the better looking ones that I'm in.
Yeah, certainly is. Certainly does look pretty good. I think so. Haven's obviously done well, so that was a really good call on that one. And then Wi-Fi looks like it's bottoming as well. So I may start to take a position in this. I think it looks relatively. Are you long on this one as well?
Yeah, I know I've got a long term position in this,
Mm.
but I'm sort of managing that a little bit. I'm kind of keeping 50% just holding, and then the other 50% I'm sort of managing as I see fit as I go. So I sold them some a little bit higher up, and I actually got some on the bounce. So you're on the 4 hour, if you stick like
Mm.
is it on the I think the 128, which I know sounds bizarre on the 4 hour, but if you just stick it on, it's like the 20 same as the 20-day moving average. Maybe
All
it's on
right.
the yeah. So yeah,
Let me
either of
go
those.
on. Um,
Yeah, if you stick the 20-day moving average on there.
uh, doesn't seem to have it. Is this Binance the one that you use for this?
Oh, maybe not. Maybe that's why. Uh, or if
What
you go down
what
to the
chart do you
4 hour,
normally
you'll be
look at?
able to do it.
Okay. Four. Yeah.
You see how it keeps tapping. So I bought back in yesterday when it tapped that again,
Hmm.
and I talked about it in the chat. You see back on the 5th, 6th, where
Hmm.
it tapped it there, back there on the 5th of September. I
Yeah.
bought some there and then bottled it and sold a little bit higher up. So I've kind of been playing this line because clearly other people are as well. But I'm still actually pretty cautious on this because I'm cautious on alts as a whole. And if you look at Predator on the 4 hour, it's really good on Wi-Fi. Um, so I'm letting that be my guide right now, and it's still red, I think, on the 4 hour, or maybe it's thinking about it's in a bit
Yeah.
of
It's
chop.
it's not
So yeah,
quite
yeah.
ready to roll.
See, and you can to your point earlier on, like you may as well just wait for that trend to kick in because look, on something as volatile as this, once that turns green and you got confirmation, it really gets going.
Yeah.
So I'm just being a bit patient here rather than jumping back in
Yeah. I think
with
that
my
makes
full
total
stack.
sense. Makes total sense. So I guess I mean obviously if it
Wait
starts.
and see that green sitting on my hands until then.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I think, if it starts getting above 35, that'll start to turn all of this stuff green as well anyway. So,
Yeah,
um, yeah, I guess that 120, it's not given the trend, it doesn't look like it's a bad place to buy. However, I'd prefer to just pay, like say it's better to pay attention at this point in time. It just looks like a good time to keep an eye on this one, have it on your watch list, just in case it does start to get going. Um, I mean, did we actually look cross time frames on Bitcoin? I don't think we did. Um, just quickly have a look at that. It's been extremely choppy across the board, really, for Bitcoin.
Mm.
So yeah, we've had this 30-minute sell-off. You can see it's even Predator's a bit unsure what's going on, really. The 4 hour is still telling you to be cautious. The 6 hour as well. The 12 hour and the 1 day look pretty good. Um, Certainly supported by all that volume buying. So yeah, it's just kind of sit on your hands at the moment time for me, and then think about potentially shorting the stock market next week is where my head's at. So the closer I can buy Bitcoin to 10, the better. And I'm not the only person thinking that, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, so that's sort of my overall sort of outlook on the market. Frustrating somewhat because no, not anticipating particularly large amounts of volatility anytime soon. So to me, it's just like try and build a long position on Bitcoin and then sort of hopefully start leveraging it up as long as there's no major crash in the stocks. Let's just see how they're doing actually, because we are getting, the UK is just closed. So yeah, just it's definitely not a good looking chart if you're bullish. I don't think. If we lose these lows down here next week, it's going to make for that move hopefully down to 3,100 or something like that. So yeah, so that's really it for me. I mean, have you got anything specific, Phil? Or
No, no, no.
no?
That's good. That's
Good,
good. I'm pretty
good.
much aligned with that. And yeah, patience right now I think is the key word. Go and have a beer tonight. Don't forget, don't look at the markets too much because there's not too much happening right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's good. This is the sort of time when you can start, working on your strategies, trying to understand, what build some tools for when you need when the market does start to get going again. Um, I think yesterday I did a bit of analysis just on what happens when Bitcoin's sort of going up and the alts are kind of either going sideways or down, and when that has happened in the past, it's led to a fairly sharp correction in Bitcoin over the following few days. So that was yesterday. I was sort of starting to lean bearish as a result of that. I mean, if you just think about it, it kind of suggests that the alts are bleeding into Bitcoin a little bit. And I think that is ultimately sort of what we've been seeing. So probably going to see some weekend fuckery, no doubt, when the CME sort of close off over the weekend. So I'll be trying to buy those dips ideally. Um, so yeah, plan for Monday is I've written up and done quite a bit of the how to construct a chart, or the way that I construct a chart. So that's the first sort of educational that we're going to do. I think the way I haven't decided how I deliver it yet. Don't know whether or not it would be better to do it live or record it and then potentially play it, and then take some questions at the end. I guess I'll probably decide on Monday, depending on the price action, how we do it, because obviously if there's something to talk about on the price action, we'll do a live stream which includes that as well. But otherwise, I think it'll be interesting to just start to get through some of the educational stuff now that the markets have quietened down. So that's the first plan. Do how to construct a chart. I think that'll be useful. I've got a pretty good cool way that I think I'm going to do that as well. So looking forward to doing that on Monday. So other than that, yeah, thanks for joining today, and we'll get this put up shortly if you missed it. So overall vibes are sort of move slowly, and just have a good weekend. So that's it from me. Let me know if you've got any questions or anything like that. But otherwise, just have a good weekend. So thanks for your time. Cheers.